You're listening to the Paul Young Podcast.
So today I want to tell you about some of my friends, real friends, good friends. And the way I want to start telling you about them is that when I got home after burying my dad, he was up in British Columbia, and it was a very small little time together. It was just family, plus the funeral director. And the funeral director started to open up his own life as my sister and I sat and talked to him. There had been a lot of pain in his life, and when we started talking about our father, which growing up had not been an easy situation for us. He was a person who had no chip for being a dad at the time. I mean, he tried, but his father had broken that in him before we ever showed up. I'm the oldest of four, and we grew up in the highlands of New Guinea for the most part. My sister had a Dutch passport. My brother had a UN type passport, and my youngest brother had a Indonesian passport, and I had a Canadian passport. I was born in Canada. They were all born in the same place, but different regimes had taken over power at different times. And so it was, I'm telling you, border crossings were always really interesting. And so I'll tell you a side story that will help you understand. And this is really kind of important because people experience life from their points of view, even in the same household, so that a firstborn and a youngest will have different experiences because oftentimes their parents, if their parents are still there, if their parents have divorced, different things have occurred. And so their experience of the same environment has been completely different. If you went into, like our family, 4 different children, and you asked us to write a history of our family, you turn out with 4 different perspectives. And this is why someone has said that biographies are basically fiction. That is, you're telling your story from your point of view, and somebody else in the family would tell that same story from another point of view. So here's an example. When the Shack first came out and I started speaking everywhere, my sister came down to spend a weekend with me at a particular conference. And so she was there. I had a lot of friends at that conference. It was in Eastern Oregon. And at one point, she comes up to me and she is livid. I mean, she is so angry. And she just says to me, "You don't even see me, do you?" And it totally caught me by surprise. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She says, "You have your friends here and you have not introduced me to any of them. You act like I don't exist, like I'm not even here." And suddenly I remembered something that unconsciously was playing in my background. And that is when she and I were in way up in northern British Columbia and we were going to high school, I was ahead of her because I'm the firstborn. And one of the things that she had indicated was that she did not want to experience being in my shadow. That's one thing that really perturbed her, was that I would cast a shadow that she would have to be in. So one of the things that happened that was not good was that I had graduated actually early, and I sent her with my yearbook to get it signed. And when it came back, none of the signatures were to me. They were all to her. So she had stepped out of my shadows, all right. It was like I didn't even exist. And I was so upset that I slapped her in the face. I am so embarrassed to tell you that, but it's the only time that I ever hit someone in the face, and it was my own sister. And let me tell you, as soon as it happened, I wanted to commit suicide. I was so profoundly upset. So there's all that history in the background and her saying, "You don't even see me, do you?" And I'm thinking like, I didn't want, being the author of The Shack casts a big shadow. Whether I want it to or not, it just is what happens. And I didn't want her to get lost in that shadow. And I'm sitting there trying to justify myself. Later, I talked to Kim about it, and she said, "Well, of course she was mad. I would be too." And I'm like, Well, there goes my justifications, right? My excuses. But in that verbal argument at the time, when she says, "You don't even see me, do you?" Then she says this, "I saw what Dad did to you. I saw the way that he treated you and hit you, but I wasn't even worthy of being touched." So she saw me and the two other boys in our family take the beatings, right? But in her mind, at the time, as a child, she translated that event to, "Debbie, you're not even worth being touched." And that had been sitting there. And in this given situation, it just exploded out. So again, two different children, two completely different viewpoints because of what we experienced in the same environment. So we were talking to the guy, the funeral director, and talking about how funerals are places that lies should never be told. Our dad didn't want a big funeral. He didn't want a whole bunch of people coming. He just wanted a family service. And that's what we did. There was like 13 of us, including children. And when Debbie and I were sitting talking to the director, we talked about how difficult some of our relationship with our dad has been. And he started opening up his own life, talking about his difficulty. Now, at the graveside, as we were about to lower in the body, and by the way, I almost tripped and fell and went right in the hole at one point because we were carrying it, the casket. At the graveside, the funeral director wants to say something, which, we talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I happen to mention that in my lifetime, I'd only gotten 5 phone calls from my dad, and 3 of them were tragedies, and 2 of them were in the last 12 years that were as our relationship began to heal. And my brother says, "Well, that's way more than I got." And so you knew that there was all these things. But when my brother who said that was saying goodbye as the casket was being lowered, he put his hand on the casket and he said, "Good night, puppy. I'll see you in the morning." And this beautiful little moment. But the funeral director, he says he wanted to say something. It's like, okay. He says, "Isn't it great to know that nothing that we've experienced will matter? Everything will be instantly changed and perfect." And I said to him, I don't mean to be rude at all, but I can't tell you how much I disagree with what you just said. If nothing matters anymore, then our whole lives don't matter, right? Our experiences don't matter because everything will be just fine. And I think a lot of times we think that way about the afterlife. We think death is our salvation or death is our transformation, that's going to automatically make everything okay. And if that's true, then nothing about our lives has even mattered. The choices that we made to love, they don't really matter. The choices that we've made to harm ourselves and others, they don't matter either. Of course they matter. Our relationships are built with the things that have harmed and helped and all of that. That's what's helped form us to be who we are. We carry those things with us, and they've still got to be worked out. Reconciliation is just not automatic. So what that means for post this world, I don't know. I know that it talks about it as periods and ages of judgment in a good sense, like the fire you have to go through to be clean, but I don't know. So all that to go back to getting home right after we've buried my dad. And I arrive and there's a card waiting for me, a sympathy card. And so I have a sympathy card. Now, it was the only sympathy card that I got. I've got emails and I got messages and they're beautiful and wonderful. But to get an actual card, that was really cool. And I open it up and all over the card are different of my friends who have signed this thing. Let me read you what it says in these cards. So from Nicholas, "I'm sending my condolences and my love to you and your family. My prayers are that you remain strong and at peace, and you remain under the wings of the Most High." Then from Akil, "Dear Paul, sending my condolences to you and your family. You're in my prayers. From Donald Middlebrook. Paul, dude. I have to use this when I see the way he wrote this, but Paul, dude, sorry to hear about your dad. One of the things that helped me with Maggie's passing several weeks ago was the thought of their now comfort. From Harold Wayne Nicholas. Paul, my heart is with you and your family in your time of grief. Remember, it is in our times of sorrow that God holds us the closest. Love, your friend. From David Jordan. Paul, it is my prayer that God will comfort your family during this difficult time. From Terry. Today, Wes gave me the news that your father passed away. I'm so sorry, but I thank God for the gift that your dad gave you in saying he was proud of you. From Purvis Payne. Brother Paul, my heart goes out to you and your family. Continue to be strong and hold on, my brother. May the love comfort you and console your soul. Take care. My prayers are with you. Stand, my brother, stand. From Mike Bain. I'm so sorry to hear about your father. Please know that you and your family are in our hearts and prayers, sending good thoughts of love from our hearts. Oh, there's one more. Dear Paul, with love, my heart and prayers are with you and your family. Please be strong and very courageous. 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18. That's signed by KB, Kevin Burns, pastor. So, you get a card like this, and I was just sort of blown away. But let me tell you some more of the story. The whole story is not possible, but a little more of the story. And that is, this card was sent to me by my friends on death row. Unit 2, Riverbend Maximum Security Penitentiary, just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. These are my friends. And they got together and made this card for me. Kevin Burns, by the way, the pastor, he is an ordained minister. We think he's the only ordained pastor inmate on death row anywhere in the United States. So again, don't make assumptions. You don't know the whole story. And I just wanted to share with you that these are some of my friends. You'll get to know them better as we do this podcast. So for today, big hugs and much love. Thank you for listening. If you would like to connect with us with inquiries, comments, suggestions, stories, and more, please go to paulyoungpodcast.com. There you're going to find resources and any notes related to any particular podcast. Today, participate with love, do the next right thing, and trust the ripples.